Hi everybody, this is Amy. Um, excuse me. I wish I could say that this week has been easy, but really it hasn't. I had an anxiety attack on Saturday when we were at the beach. Um, Going to the beach was great because it's been really hot here lately. But there was a particular moment where I ended up a little further out than I was wanting, and it ended up triggering a panic attack. Um, the panic that happened was really hard to explain. I just know that I kind of lost where I was and I started hyperventilating really bad. Um, that that's something that if you've never experienced it, it's really scary. You feel like you can't breathe, even though you're breathing really fast. So it seems kind of contradictory, but it's a very scary feeling when you're having a panic attack that includes hyperventilation. Um, in my mind, I knew I had to calm down, and it took me several minutes to be able to get my breathing under control. It was quite a while before I felt semi normal again. The thing about anxiety attacks, especially when they're bad enough to cause that hyperventilation, is that it saps your energy. And for the rest of the day after that, I was really tired. Um, I've also had some more depression issues going on this week. Um, I've had some personal stuff that I can't really go into at this point because of privacy reasons. Um, but because I've been dealing with my own as well as other other things, it's been taking a toll on me. Um, Sleeping has been harder. Um, and that's that's a whole issue in and of itself. Um, I ended up having a really bad day at work on Tuesday because I was so exhausted, and then just everything going on. I had a hard time not crying, and crying at work is something I absolutely hate to do. Excuse me, I've got something in my throat today. It's a little bit annoying. I'm so sorry. Um, since starting these videos, I've been trying to pay a little more attention to how I feel. Um, I've noticed that if I'm doing something that occupies my mind, keeps me more busy, I tend to cope a little bit better. Um, if I'm overly tired or if there's really nothing going on, then my symptoms tend to come up more. Um, it's not necessarily just sad, but I've noticed that it's more just negative. Um, there's the sadness, of course, but there's anger, hopelessness, and just an overall emptiness, like feeling nothing. That's not exactly a good point to be at. Um, Usually, when I feel angry, I've noticed that does not match whatever situation I'm in. Um, it's out of proportion, really. The anger is a lot stronger than what the situation warrants, and it also tends to come out at people that don't really deserve it. So, if you do end up on the wrong side of that, I apologize. I it's not pretty, and I'm really sorry. Um, in light of Saturday's event, the panic attack, the hyperventilation. I did a little bit of research. People who know me know that I research just about everything. I'm a research fanatic, and I like knowing what's going on. I like knowing the answers. And so I was curious, what causes that sensation that you can't breathe when you're hyperventilating? Because obviously you're breathing, you would think, okay, you're bringing in more oxygen, that would be a good thing. Well, I actually found a couple of interesting little facts. First of all, only about 60% of panic or anxiety attacks actually have hyperventilation. I thought that number was going to be a lot higher, and I was kind of surprised to see that it's only 60%. The feeling of not having enough oxygen and not being able to breathe is actually caused by having too much oxygen. Wait, what? Too much oxygen? How can that be? Well, it turns out that you actually use the carbon dioxide that you breathe out to utilize the oxygen. And so when you're hyperventilating, you're bringing in all this extra oxygen. Your body's not retaining enough of the carbon dioxide to utilize the oxygen. Does that make sense? It was kind of confusing to me at first. I had to read over it a couple of times. I thought it was fascinating that breathing too much can be a bad thing. It seems backwards, but now that I know the science behind it, it makes a little more sense to me. I had never really looked into hyperventilation before because it's really not something I experience a whole lot. It's not one of my more common symptoms. It's usually only in really extreme cases. I've only hyperventilated a handful of times in my life, which I'm very fortunate for, actually. And that actually gives me a pretty nice little entry there, or intro, I guess, into something that was asked of me this week. And that was, what are my personal signs or symptoms of anxiety and depression? Anxiety has more outward symptoms, so I'll go into that first. It's also a little more complex, I guess you could say, to explain. There's more to it. Depression is a little more simple, if you want to put it that way. So I'll explain that one second. A lot of people think that somebody having an anxiety attack or a panic attack is, hyperventilating, freaking out. They're just kind of out of control. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that is because that's how Hollywood portrays it usually. I think now with everybody coming out with their own diagnoses and being more vocal about it, that's going to change, hopefully. For me, though, it's usually a lot quieter than that. It's a lot more subtle. My biggest sign that I'm dealing with anxiety at any given moment is actually within my hands. I fidget. It could be anything as small as playing with my nails, picking at the skin around my nails, wringing my hands together, just fidgeting. And so if you see that, then I'm feeling anxious. But it's not at an intolerable level at that point. That's just kind of my way of working out the energy that kind of builds with anxiety. Sometimes my hands will start to shake a bit. That's when it's a little bit worse, but it's still not like a horrible deal. If it gets really bad, then my hands can actually start to swell a bit. In my research, I read that may be attributed to an increase in blood pressure during anxiety. I've never actually checked my own blood pressure, so that may be the case. That may not. I don't know for myself specifically. Something else that's another sign of feeling anxious is eye contact. I don't know what this stems from. I don't know the logic behind it. But I have a hard time making or maintaining eye contact. I also have a hard time sleeping, whether it's falling asleep or whether it's staying asleep. I do have insomnia bouts. That in and of itself creates a nasty cycle. Lack of sleep makes it harder to cope, which makes it harder to sleep, and it just goes back and forth until I just collapse from sheer exhaustion. It insomnia usually lasts for several days, and I finally I collapse, and like I said, sheer exhaustion, and I sleep it off, and I wake up and I feel better. A lot of my symptoms, though, people can't see. I feel it, but people can't see it. A lot of it is within my brain. I like to say that I have two different brains, and they work against each other. I have a logical brain, which knows that everything's going to be okay. I'll get through this, everything's going to be fine. And then I have my anxious brain. And that's the one that tells me everything's going to hell. I'm not going to make it through this. These two brains go back and forth. And so that makes a lot of noise in my head. Because of that, I have a hard time following conversations. I have a hard time keeping track of what I'm saying. And so I've actually been called airheaded and kind of ditzy because of the internal conversation in my head. It makes it hard for me to follow sometimes what's going on. I worry about everything. A lot of times it's stuff I have absolutely no control over. And a lot of times it's really petty stuff. I've worried at times about what to wear. Something that most people would be like, okay, I'm going to wear this shirt and these pants. I'll sit there, is this really the best outfit to wear today? Would it be better if I wore this outfit? It's the constant worry wears me down sometimes, and so I get more irritated, more agitated, I think would be a better way to describe it. Excuse me. Another invisible symptom that people can't see, and fortunately this one doesn't happen too often, I start to tingle, especially in my lower arms, my hands, fingers. That usually doesn't happen unless a full-blown panic attack is about to happen. Usually if I feel that, I know that I need to figure out how to calm myself down, or it's going to explode, basically. I'll end up having a full-blown panic attack, and I really don't like those. Sometimes when it gets to that point, where I am having that full-blown panic attack, it can happen like it did at the beach this weekend, where I'm hyperventilating. I'm kind of lost as to where I am. It can also be more inward. I still feel like I can't breathe, but I'm not hyperventilating. It's just my chest gets really, really tight. Whatever room or space I'm in seems to be closing in on me fast. When I get to that point, it's a struggle to maintain even the slightest little bit of control over myself. And if I do lose that control, then that's when hyperventilation happens. That's when I'm not really there anymore. You know, the logical part of my brain just completely shuts down at that point. And that's when somebody on the outside could really tell that I'm having a full-blown anxiety attack. Fortunately, these full-blown attacks don't happen as often as they used to. Before I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder, before I learned my coping techniques, they would happen and I would have no idea what was going on. And so it would happen more often. It was bad. But it's gotten a lot better since I learned more about it. I still deal with the anxiety, but I don't have the full-blown attacks so often anymore. With depression, it's a little bit easier to explain. People generally think that a depressed person is just a sad person. It's more than that. I mean, yes, a depressed person can be sad. They can also be angry. They could also be hopeless. And a lot of times, excuse me, this thing in my throat just won't go away. Anyway, a lot of times, like I said earlier, I feel nothing. I'm just empty. It's not a good feeling. It really isn't. On my worst days, it is more the negative stuff, the hopelessness, the anger, all that. And there's usually no clear reason for it. It just happens. On those days, it's a struggle to do the things that normal people do. Getting out of bed, getting dressed, taking a shower, all this stuff that should be normal everyday stuff. And it becomes a struggle just to do those. Most days, if I'm in a, I guess, quote unquote, minor depression, the days that I feel more empty, then I can still function. And because of how I grew up, I was always told, fake it till you make it. And so I'm pretty good at that on the minor days. But on the really bad days, it's not happening. Everybody who looks at me will know that I'm dealing with something like that. Living with both is a challenge. I found something online that pretty well describes it for somebody who's never experienced having both. I said, it's like being scared and tired at the same time. It's the fear of failure, but no urge to be productive. It's wanting friends, but not wanting to socialize. It's wanting to be alone, but not wanting to be lonely. It's caring about everything and caring about nothing. It's feeling everything at once while being paralyzingly numb. It's knowing that others live with this, but feeling all alone in the world, like nobody can understand. It's a contradiction. The anxiety is more about energy and the need to do things, where the depression is like, no, that, we're down today, so we're not doing anything. It's a constant contradiction between the two. But that was a meme that I saw online, and I think it describes it perfectly for anyone who's never experienced living with both. So, anyway, that's all I've got for this week. In case you missed my announcement last week, I am on Facebook. I'll put the link down in the description. If you have questions for me, if you things you want answered, or even if you just want to say hi, leave me a message down in the comments. Hit me up on Facebook. If you prefer keeping it between you and me, that's cool. I understand. You can send me an email. I'll put my email address down in the description as well. Until next time, stay strong. Always keep fighting. Live another day. I'll see you guys next week.